There's lots of things that can fail with a toilet system on board. In this video, I'm sharing how to do an emergency pump out if either the gravitation hose or the valve is blocked and you're far away from a pump out facility. Most holding tanks are fitted with an outside ventilation from the holding tank. This will often show you signs of a clogged up system if it starts to smell more than normal or even spraying out liquid from a full holding tank. In worst cases, the entire holding tank can crack open if the inside pressure gets too big. This can go faster than you think, especially in tropical climate. So what can you do if you're far away from any pump out facilities? This is what I'm going to walk you through in this video. First of all, check that the valve is open, and you can even try to close and open it again. If your valve is stuck, either in open or closed position, this should have high priority in being replaced sooner than later. If the valve is open and still not drain your holding tank, it means that either the hose or the valve is clogged. This can often be a combination of toilet paper and crystallized plumbing from urine. Preventive hints are to not use toilet paper in the toilet, and frequently flush through with some vinegar. As a friendly hint, before you start, there is two significant differences working with the hose from the toilet to the holding tank and the hose and valve from the holding tank to the ocean. You probably already know this, but this through hole sits under water level, meaning if you cannot close the valve and try to disconnect this hose, you will take in water. And as a disgusting bonus, the entire holding tank will flood out on your floor from this hose. That is, if the problem sits in the valve and not in the hose itself. It is possible to avoid or at least reduce water ingress by using a wooden cone from the outside. But still, you might risk a big load of mess coming out of this hose. Disconnecting the hose under the holding tank instead will not lead to water ingress as long as you keep the hose higher than the outside sea level. Still, you will get the entire load from the holding tank sprayed out. So before addressing this problem, you want to reduce the amount of black water in the holding tank to an absolute minimum. First step is to deattach the ventilation hose from the top of the holding tank and close it so it's not leaking air or liquid. It's several ways to do this, but a quick fix is to just put a bolt that matches the inside hose diameter and use hose clamps to seal it off. For the next steps, you will need a tube with threads matching the deck fitting. Then a hose or even plastic tubes glued or clamped to this will work as an extension well outside your yacht. Because the ventilation is now closed and the pump out is open, the overpressure when pumping water through the toilet will force the content in your holding tank through your outside hose. This will not empty but eventually rinse the holding tank. Now it's possible to pump in vinegar and let it sit some hours. If you're lucky, this can open the blocked gravity hose. If not, at least now it's a better starting point for the next steps. As it's now mainly salt water in your holding tank, the clock is not ticking anymore. Meaning if available not too far away, you could take your time to reach a pump out facility. So my next step is to drain the holding tank as much as possible. There is at least 3 ways to do so. One is to use a thinner hose from outside and if possible use a water pump to pump out the water. But remember, it needs air to not create vacuum. So at this point you either need to open the ventilation hose or make sure the tube or hose you use for outside pumping allowed sufficient airflow. Using compressed air is a terrible idea, as this entire system is not a high pressure circuit. Most likely the first place to calculate for high pressure would be the yoker valve that sits inside your toilet. I can guarantee you it will be a mess. The other solution is to deattach the hose from the deck fitting that's dedicated for the pump out solution. The reason is this sits higher and the mess while deattach this will be minimal. Carefully lower the hose to fill one bucket at a time until the tank is drained. After the holding tank is drained, you can now safely deattach the gravity hose from under the holding tank. But remember to close the valve. This hose might either need replacement or at least some cleaning. After this hose is drained as well, if possible to close the valve, it should not create too much mess being deattached from the valve fittings. I should now be able to find my problem. Either the valve is blocked or it's the hose. In my case, it was the hose that was blocked, and because I could close my valve, removing the entire hose was not a big problem. If you're not able to close this valve, use a wooden plug to stop the water ingress from the outside first. I'm going to replace this hose, as that's normal after some years. But to avoid any mess or smell, I put it back in place again, until I get my hands on a new one. This needs to be a hose that's designed for this purpose, as it's not leaving any smell. If I was to build a new yacht, I would add a valve under the holding tank on the gravitation hose, because then this job could have gone much faster, not to forget easier. This might be a future upgrade, because if it's one thing that's guaranteed, this will happen again someday. Thank you so much for watching and for subscribing. Don't forget to check out my sailing channel as well. This kind of videos takes a lot of time, and I still have chosen to share them here for free. So if you appreciate this content and want to support my work, you could consider to sign up as a patron and show your support there. I'm using the same Patreon page for this as I do for my main channel, that's Sailing with Thomas.